Hi everyone, welcome back. We are going to continue today with Entitled. I'm a little festive today because it is November 11th, which is Remembrance Day in Canada, and in the area of Canada that I am in, it is traditional to, after you have your remembrance at 11 a.m., you put up your Christmas tree and put out your holiday lights and all your, your holiday treasures. So I'm trying to be a little festive today. All right. I hope the pictures that I posted in the video were helpful. I haven't been providing a whole lot of commentary, and part of that is because Cheer Denise has already read this book, and she did such a great job at commenting. And honestly, when I watch Cheer Denise, I'm not watching so much for the content of the book as I am for her comments and her opinions, because she's so funny and she has so many funny little sayings, and I just laugh so hard. But in order to do something a little different, my focus is going to be primarily on the text. And because Cheer Denise's focus is the commentary, she reads a little fast. So I really wanted to slow the text down so that we can really kind of absorb everything. And I'm going to put the pictures up so that we can visualize, the place and the thing and, whatnot. So, for example, when we put up Lowood House, it provides so much context because Sarah is always saying, I'm just a commoner, I'm just a country girl. Well, when I think of being a country girl, growing up in a rural area, I think of growing up in my parents' bungalow that had 2 bedrooms. And then, we see the homes that she was growing up in, and it just pulls us back into reality. She wasn't growing up in a small country home. She was growing up in big homes and lots of land. And so it just helps kind of put everything into perspective. So that's going to be my focus. I do comment a little bit here and there, but, I just don't want to rehash anything that Cheer Denise has already talked about because, she did such a great job, and if you want more commentary, I would suggest going and watching her because she is a laugh a minute. Oh my God, she's just the best. Our focus will be primarily on just understanding the text and, so let's continue. This section is entitled His Royal Heartthrob. In September 1981, Andrew was commissioned as a sub-lieutenant and, the following month, joined the frontline 820 Naval Air Squadron based on the aircraft carrier HMS Invincible as a pilot on one of its 9 Sea King helicopters. Little did he know that within months he would be at war. On the 2nd of April 1982, the Argentine leader, General Galtieri, invaded the British sovereign territory of the Falkland Islands. Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher vowed that they would be retaken, and on 5 April, Invincible sailed to the South Atlantic as part of a task force of 40 ships, with the Queen adamant that her son should be treated no differently from any other serviceman. That would be so hard as a parent because your instinct is to protect your child, and so to have to make that statement, and then if anything happened, the guilt you would feel would just be unbearable. I will order Prince Andrew into battle just as I would any of my other pilots. He is a co-pilot, and with the others, he gets the same work to do. And he gets no quarter from his fellows. 820 Squadron's commanding officer, Lieutenant Commander Ralph Wykes Sned. That's probably not the right pronunciation. And I don't know if it's Ralph or Rafe. Usually in Britain it's Rafe. So let's try that again. Lieutenant Commander Rafe Wykes Snade. Stressed. Sorry, Rafe. I have found him a capable young man and competent in the air. He has been with the squadron. Sorry. He has been with the squadron a year, 7 months on operational duty. And, of course, he is very special to the public. You are conscious of that fact. But he gets no special treatment here. and I am under no instructions from above to treat him any differently from any others under my command. As a Sea King co-pilot, Andrew, known in the Navy as H, after HRH, was expected to engage in anti-submarine warfare, using passive sonobuoys or active sonar lowered into the water to protect the task force. The helicopters could also attack with torpedoes and depth charges, conduct surface surveillance searching for hostile surface ships, as well as transfer supplies, ammunition, letters, and men to other task force ships and ashore on the Milk Run. They evacuated casualties and operated search and rescue. His best-known role, however, would be to act as a decoy for Exocet missiles, considered state-of-the-art, able to fly at very low levels to evade radar. They were to prove deadly to HMS Sheffield, killing 20 servicemen, HMS Glamorgan, where 14 perished, and the Merchant Navy's Atlantic Convoyer, in an attack that killed 12 and destroyed the helicopters intended to carry troops across the islands. Lacking weapons that were sufficiently fast-firing to tackle the incoming sea-skimming missiles at short range, the Navy adopted a novel solution. Helicopters were deployed to drop chaff, strips of metal that confused the radar seeker of an incoming missile into thinking the metal was another target. Ships also fired chaff C, for confusion, shells from their 4.5-inch guns. The helicopter would hover in the vicinity of the aircraft carrier to distract and lure the Exocet missiles away, a risk compounded by the British Seawolf defense missiles in the accompanying Type 22 frigate, known as the Goalkeeper, sometimes locking on to the Sea King instead. The prince later remembered almost being killed by a chaff shell fired from a British warship. By chance, in our general direction, and for a moment it was on a steady bearing, which meant it was going to hit us. Thankfully, it passed in front of the helicopter. But I don't know how far, but rather further than I had imagined it would have been. It was skilled and dangerous work, for even everyday duties, such as transporting goods and people, had their risks, given the atrocious weather conditions and the fact that over 60% of its time the Sea King operated in the dark. The demanding rotas saw the squadron flying around the clock continuously for weeks on end, 4 hours in the air and 6 or 7 hours back on board, as the small group of choppers were sent out on their various duties in a non-stop cycle of eating, sleeping, and flying, blurring the line between night and day. Tom Arnold, who served as winchman and part of the foreman team with Andrew alongside senior pilot Chris Hewitt, and Ian McAllister as observer, remembered them living off tinned meat and vegetables, and sometimes being so tired they would fall asleep in the air. He found Andrew willing to muck in. If we were in a rush, he'd help me load the helicopter, and, as a rookie sub-lieutenant, prepared to take advice, although the prince was a bit awkward since he had little understanding of their lives and remained very private. Deputy Air Engineering Officer Steve George, responsible for the upkeep of the aircraft, thought Andrew a competent P2, second pilot. The Duke's divisional duties included being mess deck officer, and George remembered the prince using his royal status to try to ensure the fleet air arm received the best accommodation on ship. Like others before him, he felt Andrew was a shy person trying to compensate. The prince was a good pilot and officer, and good company, but also found the squadron uncongenial. One of the helicopter pilots who served with Andrew in the Falklands was more critical, judging him self-important, self-opinionated, arrogant, and contemptuous. After the war, there would be claims that the second in line to the throne was never put in danger, and that his bravery had been exaggerated for propaganda reasons, but this is disputed by Wyke Sneed. Outside my squadron, apart from my captain, Jeremy Black, nobody had any influence over the employment of PA during hostilities. Admitting that he and Black had developed codes that could be used to avoid calling on the prince if another aircraft was immediately available to take a high-risk task at no notice, Wyke Sneed added that protecting the aircraft carrier was far more important than saving a prince and a helicopter. They were as much about covering our backsides in the inevitable official inquiry into the loss of the spare to the throne as anything else. Yet with Andrew remaining aboard the carrier, there was, of course, little chance that he could be captured and paraded through the streets of Buenos Aires, as enemy intended. Wyke Sneed knew that ashore the risk would be greater, but found no reason to include Andrew in the detachment sent to San Carlos on operations west of the Falkland Islands themselves. He denied that Andrew wasn't allowed ashore during hostilities. Rather, he said, there was no requirement for him to go ashore, since his duties were with the carrier battle group. You know, I think it's easy to criticize and be like, well, he kept Andrew a little more safe than everyone else. But think about it. Would you want to be the person who was held responsible for the safety of the second in line to the throne? No. I wouldn't want to be. I'd be like, you stay here. Okay? Just hunker down. Eat a sandwich or something. I certainly wouldn't want that responsibility because think about it. If anything had gone wrong, then for the rest of his military career, this Rafe guy would have gone down in the history books as the commander who sent Prince Andrew to his death. And that would be a horrible legacy. So, criticize all you want, but I get it. Andrew has since spoken of his terror. Oh, wait, I skipped a little paragraph. Oh, no, I didn't. Andrew has since spoken of his terror after flying over the Atlantic conveyor, where he rescued 8 crew. I saw it being struck by the missile, and it was something I'll never forget. It was horrific. Wyke Sneed felt that such comments went against a soldier's professional ethos. I mean, does it? Is a soldier not supposed to find something horrible or horrific or terrifying? I'm more concerned when they don't, because I'm like, you might be a psychopath. Oh, there's a sneeze brewing. Bless me. Okay. Guys, I think my sweater is shedding because my nose is so tickly. I think there must be little fibers. Ugh, my apologies. Okay. I am so sorry. I had to go change because my nose was so itchy because there were just so many little fibers. And when I was saying, I think my sweater's shedding, I literally saw a little fiber, a little red or orange, whichever color it is, fiber floating across my vision. And I'm like, I can't do this. They were like a magnet. They were just going straight for my nose. They were just all in. And I'm like, woof. Okay, let's continue. Me. Okay, Wyke Sneed felt that such comments went against a soldier's professional ethos. Nevertheless, on a number of occasions, inevitably, Andrew was exposed to significant risk and danger. Luckily for him, Black and Wyke Sneed he survived them. I have no doubt that at the time he, like most of us, wondered whether he would. On 14 June, the Argentines surrendered, and 3 days later, Andrew flew to Stanley with Wyke Sneed and the commanding officer of the Sea Harrier Squadron, Sharkey Ward. He was able to fly around some of the islands, joke about bringing his bride on honeymoon, and telephone his mother. The line was so clear it was like speaking to London from Edinburgh, he recalled. My mother was in. It was about the right time in the evening. She was quite surprised to hear from me. Oh, she must have been thrilled. The Navy were keen to exploit their pin-up royal hero, and over the next few days the prince gave a series of newspaper interviews. On 23 August, the Sun produced a special issue on Andrew, the royal helicopter hero. He went away a royal rascal, Randy Andy, the Queen's likable but lightweight son, the paper trilled. But 4 months with the task force has made a man of the playboy prince. Oh, that might be exaggerating. Few of Invincible's 1,000-strong crew had been very impressed with Andrew when he joined the task force. At first, the prince seemed more like a 14-year-old than 22. He seemed to have led a very sheltered life, said a shipmate. He would sit clapping TV shows like The Muppets, and he loved playing foolish pranks. Well, excuse me. I like The Muppets. Okay. I think an adult who watches The Muppets, they're clever. They're not really for kids. I mean, kids like them because they're puppets, and the slapstick comedy children get, but I think The Muppets are great. The Muppet Christmas Carol, there are three Christmas carols that I love the most. Okay. The Muppet Christmas Carol. The radio, I think it was the Campbell Soup radio hour did a Christmas Carol. There was one in the 40s, I think, and one in the 50s with Sir John Barrymore. That one is incredible. And the other Christmas Carol that I love very deeply is the one with Sir Patrick Stewart. No, it's not John Barrymore. Sorry, John Barrymore. It's Lionel Barrymore. Yes, Lionel Barrymore. And then the other one is with Sir Patrick Stewart. All of those are so, so good. If you can watch them, I will see if I can find the radio version, and I will link it in the description. When I was growing up, we had it on a cassette tape, and we listened to it every Christmas Eve. And oh my gosh, I have such good memories of it. Okay, now I'm just blathering. Speaking of links in the description, I will put the link to Sarah and Andrew's wedding ceremony in the description, and I will put the link to the documentary, the royal family documentary that was mentioned in our reading yesterday. I will link that in the description as well. And I know, you might not want to sit and watch a 2-hour-long wedding, but I mean, I kind of like to because it's history, right? And I just enjoy those things, so I'll link them. All right, let's continue. Sorry that my nose is so runny. It got so itchy from that crazy sweater. I'm just yapping. Okay. So he would sit clapping TV shows like The Muppets, and he loved playing foolish pranks. Taking that personally. But views soon changed, as another shipmate explained. I think going to war gave him a tremendous jolt. He flew over the Sheffield as it sank and helped rescue the survivors from the Atlantic conveyor. That sort of experience makes anyone grow up quickly. When the chips were down and the going got rough, Andrew proved to be as brave as the next man. On 17 September, Invincible, continuously at sea for a record 166 days, arrived back in Britain surrounded by pleasure cruisers filled with bare-breasted women. A traditional welcome for task force ships. I had no idea. I had no idea that was a thing. So all the girls are like, welcome back. How thrilling. That is wild. Andrew's parents and sister, who had joined the ship, were reunited with him in a private stateroom before it sailed to Portsmouth. As the Royal Marines band played Land of Hope and Glory and Those Magnificent Men in Their Flying Machines. The prince later admitted of his Falklands service. I am not sure if it made me a better person, but those experiences undoubtedly made me view life with more compassion and a greater understanding of humanity. I can certainly say that I wouldn't be the person I am today without the experience. In a defining image, the grinning young naval officer disembarked the ship with a red rose presented by a young girl clenched between his teeth. The good-looking son of the sovereign had done his duty bravely and had never been more popular. HRH was now said to stand for His Royal Heartthrob. Shortly after going to the Falklands, Andrew, who had been dating a ballet dancer, Christina Parker, had met a young dark-haired actress, Catherine Koo Stark. She was 4 years older than him, the daughter of Wilbur Stark, a successful Hollywood producer, and Kathleen Norris Stark Caruso, an American writer and television presenter. After finishing school, Stark had embarked on an acting career with an uncredited role as a bridesmaid in the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Guys, I am struggling with words. And a part later cut in Star Wars. When Stark met Andrew on a blind date fixed by his Gordonston friend Charlie Young at the beginning of 1982, she had a small part in a production of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf at the National Theatre, and was living in a flat share in Belgravia's Chester Square. The dinner date was a great success, and he invited her to come to BP tomorrow for lunch. Buckingham Palace, come to BP. Though she later revealed, initially I wondered why he was taking me to a petrol station. Oh, I see, because I think BP is a petrol station. They had lunch on trays in his apartment at Buckingham Palace. They were both single, carefree, and for Stark, it started immediately. When Andrew comes into your life, there is no room for anyone else. He takes up all the space. He walked into my life, and that was it. He was my life. There was no discussion. None was needed. Suddenly, I was his girlfriend. Using the code name Fiona Campbell, she would stay with Andrew at friends of his, such as the Duke and Duchess of Roxburgh, at Flore's Castle in the Scottish borders, or have evenings at Buckingham Palace with Coo's cockatoo, Candy. In a short space of time, the relationship matured and grounded him. No more food fights covering footmen and mashed potato, driven by a strong emotional bond and shared interests, not least in photography. A Buckingham Palace servant remembered the feeling among the staff, who all thought the world of Coo for her politeness and for treating them as human beings, unlike what was to come. The relationship continued through April, when Andrew left for the Falklands. He gave her a copy of Rudyard Kipling's poems as a memento, and they corresponded during the conflict. She was waiting for him at Buckingham Palace when he returned in September. Joined him soon after at Balmoral for, in her words, evenings spent playing parlor games, doing jigsaws, and pretending the dog hasn't farted. She had brought with her a pair of pink plastic cowboy boots, which did not pass muster with the chatelaine. When the Queen got to the back door, she stopped in her tracks, pointed majestically at a pair of fluorescent boots, and demanded, "Whose are those?" They were quickly replaced by some green wellies from Ballater. The following month, the couple flew under the alias of Mr. and Mrs. Cambridge for a holiday at Princess Margaret's house, Les Jolies Eaux, in Mustique, where they were joined by her mother, the publisher John Hatt, and a writer friend of Andrew's, Jocelyn Gray. But the holiday was brief. By chance, a journalist had been on the same British Airways flight, and the couple were soon under siege. Stark likened it to being under house arrest. They couldn't go anywhere without a military level of preparation. The paparazzi were flying over low in light aircraft or swimming up to the beach in scuba gear, she said. There was a palpable sense of real physical danger. We didn't know if the people coming at us were carrying a gun or a camera. 2 photographers were arrested on the grounds of the villa and locked up in the island's only cell, a bare room next to the local church, where they were entertained by a temperance sect singing gospel songs. It was clear that this was a serious relationship. According to Coo's mother, they talked about spending the rest of their lives together. I thought they were going to be married. Sorry that I'm tongue-tied today. Returning to London, the two continued to meet secretly, aided by friends such as the singer Steve Strange, who was then going out with Francesca Chessie Tyson, daughter of the German steel tycoon, Baron Heine Tyson, one of the richest men in the world. They let the new couple rendezvous at their house on Seymour Walk in Chelsea. Andrew could call to let us know he was on the way, said Strange, but he would never use his own name. The signal would be something like, "It's the changing of the guard." One weekend the couple stayed at the Baron's mansion in Gloucestershire. Andrew, much to his embarrassment, smuggled out of Seymour Walk on the floor of a transit van, shocked strange by his behavior, coming down to breakfast and making jokes about what he and Koo had been doing the previous night. He told us he'd banged his head on the four-poster bed while having sex, recalled Strange. He thought this was hilarious. It was real schoolboy humor. Stark bought Andrew his first pair of denim jeans, while he gave her a t-shirt emblazoned with "Here Comes Trouble." It was to prove prophetic. The story of the prince's affair with the actress was catnip to the press. Her letters to him and a home movie of the two lovers were stolen from her flat. A 20-year-old palace kitchen worker, Kieran Kenny, sold the story to the Sun, Queen Koo's romps at the palace, suggesting that Stark stayed overnight at the palace so often that it had become a second home to her and occasioning the Queen to seek an injunction preventing the paper from publishing its second installment, How Barefoot Dye Buttered My Toast. Andrew tried to persuade the Queen's secretary. Andrew tried to persuade the Queen's press secretary, Michael Shea, to release a statement asking for the couple to be given privacy, but Shea refused on the grounds that the palace did not comment on private matters. In revenge, Stark sent Shea an enema kit. He thanked her for her thoughtful gift. Okay, I get it. The press soon discovered that Stark had appeared nude in several dramas. A 1975 television play, The Blue Film, based on a Graham Greene story, with a script written by John Mortimer. The 1975 film, The Adolescents, with Anthony Andrews, in which she becomes the target for a trio of men who take illicit photographs of young girls. Ugh. The 1977 film's Cruel Passion, sometimes called Justine, based on the life of the Marquis de Sade, and Emily, which featured her full frontal and in a lesbian shower scene. She had also posed nude for the Japanese photographer Kikaku Oyama's 1979 book, Private Viewing, and for the photographer Terry O'Neill. She quickly acquired the nickname Starkers. Questions were raised in the press and Buckingham Palace about Koo's suitability as a royal bride. As Prince Philip was supposed to have told Prince Harry, one steps out with an actress, one doesn't marry them. The two lovers carried on seeing each other clandestinely, but she felt let down that Andrew accepted the situation instead of fighting for her. She escaped the attention by going on a trip to Australia, Bali, and India. Though, when she returned to London and saw him again, by then it was basically over. It wasn't like a Hollywood movie with a grand finale. In the end, we just ran out of energy. It had been strangled to death. Ain't that just the way? In March 1983, Andrew's ship HMS Invincible docked in Barbados for 2 weeks of rest and relaxation after exercises in the Caribbean. At one of the cocktail parties aboard, he met a former Page 3 model and actress, Vicky Hodge, who was based on the island. The 36-year-old Hodge, a baronet's daughter, had appeared in several racy films such as The Stud, 1974, and Confessions of a Sex Maniac, 1974. Her former lovers included Rod Stewart, Ringo Starr, and the London gangster John Bindon, who had been charged with murder 5 years earlier, though acquitted on the grounds of self-defense. She soon added Andrew to her conquests and sold her story to the tabloids several times over the next 20 years. Hodge remembered how the prince immediately latched on to her and her two friends, launching into a series of jokes, all of them interminable and extremely stupid. He liked the sound of his own voice, and if anyone made a comment, he stopped talking and looked at them until the stage was his again. Imagine just, as I was saying. The young naval officer showed the three women his cabin, which Hodge recalled as being relatively Spartan, with only a teddy bear, which the prince told them was a present from his girlfriend, Koo Stark. We asked what she was like, and Andrew unlocked his briefcase embossed HRH. It was filled with her letters and photographs of her dressed scantily, nothing explicit, but near naked in blue lace underwear. They all arranged to meet the next day, and he and his 3 friends were driven in 3 police cars to the house in which Hodge was staying. The party frolicked in the sea. Suddenly, I looked round, and there was Prince Andrew stark naked with everything on display, she recalled. He wasn't in the least bit shy, because he is a well-built gentleman, and while he isn't exactly John Bindon in that department, if John was a 10, Andrew was an 8. Noticing they were being photographed, she warned Andrew, who simply stuck his bottom in the air and yelled, "You can kiss my royal arse." Oh, this guy. The prince made arrangements to rent a nearby 4-bedroom villa, and the festivities continued. He nicknamed Hodge Brushhead because of her spiky hair, while she recollected the few times we went to official events together, he either signed the visitor's book E.T. or Frog. She remembered him telling her once, "I really do wish I wasn't a prince, but a normal person." But Hodge's abiding memory was that when making love, Andrew would count down from 10, explaining that Coup had taught him to count as a way of stopping himself from climaxing too soon. She found him very full, at least he's trying. She found him very full of himself, a bit immature, but very charming, nice, and very sexual. He was a terrible flirt. The affair lasted 10 days. As they parted, he told her, "I'll speak to you tonight. I love you." She never heard from him again. But she had the last word. Interviewed by the Mirror a few weeks later, Hodge summed up her latest lover as headstrong and unwilling to heed advice that didn't appeal to him. He needs someone with the strength and authority to prevent him from getting into escapades that embarrass him and the rest of the family. Already the respect he had gained during the Falklands, only months before, was being lost, and with the birth of Prince William, while he was in the Falklands, Andrew had shifted down the royal pecking order. The People newspaper noted, "He's the world's most eligible bachelor. Considering that he's 3rd in line to the throne, he is also one of the silliest, and the Queen's #1 headache." Reporting on the Hodge story in the same issue, the psychologist George Eddington argued, "Andrew feels much more free, and the rules that apply to Charles don't really apply to him." While astrologer Russell Grant was quoted as saying, "If he wasn't a member of the royal family, his ideal role would be running a beach bar in the sun, with the odd blue movie being shown at the back." Andrew's demotion was to prove fateful, as he increasingly sought to establish a defining role for himself. Rafe Wike-Sneed believed the episode marked a turning point in the public's perception of the prince. It was the moment when Andrew began to squander the credit the nation had accorded him for his time down south. The squadron had enough numbers to physically shield the prince from the press when he was ashore in Barbados, but he didn't do much to help himself, instead asserting that it was who he was that counted. The commander also recalled the prince's tendency to blame others for incidents that were caused by his own stupidity. It didn't endear him to others. Another naval colleague who served with Andrew in 820 Squadron felt no one really knew the prince, who kept himself apart. He certainly had a strong sense of entitlement, and didn't feel he had to earn respect. He expected people to come to him and seemed to have no great interest in other people. He had no great circle of friends, and certainly wasn't one of the lads. In July 1983, Andrew completed his attachment to 820 Squadron and moved to 702 Naval Air Squadron at Portland in Dorset. The prefix 8 signifies a frontline squadron, 7 a training one, to learn how to fly the Lynx helicopter, half the size of the Sea King. As his instructor, Lieutenant Andy Simons, explained, "It will be like going from a tank to a sports car when he first jumps into a Lynx." Contrary to claims that Andrew received no special privileges, instructions were sent to the engineers servicing the helicopters. The policy of allowing His Royal Highness to enjoy a normal naval flying career and not to be subject to unnecessary severe constraints is to continue. Lynx aircraft will not be prepared to Gold Seal standards. However, certain additional engineering procedures will be applied in 702 Squadron. Key personnel are to be screened to ensure a level of technical proficiency of at least satisfactory standard and with no adverse personal qualities. All caps. In spite of the adverse media publicity from his fling with Vicky Hodge, there were plans to increase Andrew's royal duties, with arrangements to open the Mountbatten Center in Portsmouth, the Falkland Islands section of the Fleet Air Arm Museum in Yelverton, and the Biggin Hill Air Show. In February 1984, he was promoted to the rank of lieutenant, and the Queen appointed him one of her personal aides-de-camp. In April, he made his first major official overseas tour, representing the Queen at the 150th anniversary celebrations of St. Helena. From there, he went on to a 4-day tour to California to support the British Olympic Association and a trade promotion, Britain Salutes Beverly Hills. A Foreign Office report, copied to Buckingham Palace, concluded the visit had been a considerable success. In the course of a full and varied program, HRH was able to bring powerful support to the British trade promotion effort by focusing attention on British consumer goods. Not since the visit of H.M. the Queen has a foreign visitor received so much TV coverage. The overall impression given of a fresh, modern, inquiring, and caring personality has a special appeal to Americans, who invariably responded positively. The reality was rather different. 1,000 people were kept waiting at an exhibition after Andrew dawdled at an aircraft factory. Touring a Beverly Hills department store, he stopped at the counter selling bespoke British shirts. "I haven't worn that particular make since I was 13, the prince said, and 25 seconds later walked out. On a visit to Los Angeles, the 24-year-old prince turned a spray gun on a group of reporters and photographers, splattering them with white paint with the words, "I enjoyed that." He later apologized, claiming his finger had slipped, but the damage had been done. Ross Benson, writing in the Daily Express, commented, "It was his opportunity to show he is ready to accept the responsibilities of being a member of the royal family, but Prince Andrew blew it, completely and disastrously." Bill Stout of CBS Broadcast said that it was the most unpleasant royal visit since they burnt the White House in 1812. Spoiled rich kids are spoiled rich kids, whatever title they have. The Queen made Andrew pay for the damage caused, which was estimated between £15,000 and £30,000, and stipulated that in future he was to be accompanied by a PR person as well as an equerry. The city of Los Angeles had a spray gun mounted to The city of Los Angeles had the spray gun mounted on a plaque bearing a coat of arms and presented it to the prince. Oh, that must have been so embarrassing for his mother. In December, he was chosen by the people as 1984's Twit of the Year on account of this episode. Journalist Paul Callan, however, felt Andrew's arrogance was simply cover for his shyness, but he was able to get away with this behavior because of his good looks. Oh, don't we all know someone like that? There's always some guy, running around just being an absolute nightmare, and everyone just laughs, lets him get away with it because he's good looking. Thankfully, the older you get, the less that stuff tricks you, I guess I'll say. My Nana used to say, handsome is as handsome does, and pretty is as pretty does. And I was thinking that the other day. I was driving in the car, and I was thinking about, this guy, kind of, one of these kind of guys, and I was like, well, handsome is as handsome does. And that's the truth. Various women continued to be linked with Andrew in the press. In January, it had been reported he was dating Bridget Matthey, who shared his love of ballet. The following month, it was the actress Katie Rabbit, whom he had met in a photographic exhibition and who had hosted the prince's 24th birthday party at her parents' West London home. That relationship foundered when nude pictures of Rebette, taken a few years earlier, surfaced in a tabloid. Other names mooted included the actress Catherine Oxenberg, whose mother was a cousin of Prince Philip. Well, they sure keep it in the family, don't they? And who claimed he proposed marriage. Anne Marchant, Finola Hughes, and the model Claire Park. The prince had met many of these girlfriends as a result of his hobby, which had first been encouraged by his relations Lord Snowdon and Lord Lichfield, and then nurtured by the photographer Jean Nocon, whose wife Liz was to become a confidant. According to Nocon, the prince was very serious about his photography. He has an advantage over other kids in that he knows where he's at technically. If a guy can fly a helicopter, he can handle a camera, but he also has an instinctive aesthetic eye. Andrew had converted an unused bathroom on the third floor of Buckingham Palace into a dark room, and scattered throughout his apartment were blow-ups in black and white of stark landscapes, bare trees, and straggling sheep. Through Coup Stark, he had participated in Nocon's Personal Points of View exhibition, and in 1985 he published a collection of photographs, with proceeds going to charity, which he described in the foreword as a small slice of autobiography recording memories and impressions through my eyes and the lens of a camera. The largely black and white collection included pictures taken from and of Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle, holidays in Canada and Scotland, royal tours and members of the royal family, and models such as Claire Park and Finola Hughes, later best known for the daytime soap General Hospital. Asked by David Frost if there was a theme to his work, he paused and said, "Dare I say it? The theme, in fact, is loneliness." In March 1984, the Sun suggested various candidates for marriage, arguing that when he settled down, it would be with a woman who will not have a string of wildly unsuitable boyfriends. They included the 18-year-old Princess Stephanie of Monaco, 17-year-old Princess Alexia of Greece, the 17-year-old daughter of... Man, they are really choosing young girls, aren't they? The 17-year-old daughter of the Duke of I don't know how to pronounce this, Buccleuch, and 17-year-old Lady Elizabeth Ogilvy, the daughter of the Earl of Airlie, the 14-year-old twins of Lady Anne Glenconner, the 16-year-old India Hicks, granddaughter of Lord Mountbatten, another relative, and the 18-year-old Henrietta Neville. The pressure was on to find Andrew a wife. This part is entitled Enter Sarah Ferguson. In April 1984, on the recommendation of Paddy McNally, Sarah Ferguson went to work for Richard Burton, a former racing driver who had been badly burnt in a pile-up and turned fine art publisher instead. What a career change. She ran the London office for his firm, CK Graphic Arts. Like others before him, Burton admired her ability to handle people, especially entertain them, which was part of her job. "It does not require a vast knowledge of art," he said. "It's more a matter of common sense, and she has lots of that." The relationship with McNally, however, was not going well. He traveled extensively and had no wish to remarry, so Sarah began to flex her independence. At the Arabian Horse Show in Mexico that year, while working on a book on Arabian horses, she met and began an 8-month relationship with a photographer, Martin Schreiber, famous for his naked snaps of Madonna. He remembered her ability to handle any situation. We could go fishing and talk about worms, or go to a black tie event and not feel out of place. I found her one of the most unusual women I had ever met in my life. She was a Land Rover Rolls Royce, the kind you can take anywhere. I mean, I can see that because, she did grow up in country life, although So she was able to muck about. She, rode horses, and she was outdoorsy, but she also, came from this set of people where, there were a lot of glamorous events and things like that. So I can see that she would be able to kind of easily float between the worlds. In May 1985, Andrew joined 815 Naval Air Squadron, taking the lieutenant staff course at the Royal Naval College at Greenwich, and then serving aboard the frigate HMS Brazen as her Lynx pilot. The previous August, Koo Stark had married. Sorry, I think some of the editing is a little off. Okay. The previous August, Koo Stark had married the Green Shield Stamps heir, Tim Jeffries, which had deeply unsettled him. He admitted to a friend, "I am a loner, I really am. Yet when I say that no one believes me. I'd really like to be married, but I have yet to meet the right girl." And there's a little note regarding Sarah's work at the CK Graphic Arts. She would work there until the birth of her first child, most notably overseeing the publication of a book on the Impressionists and a history of the Palace of Westminster. She told us that in her memoir. That was all about to change after an intervention by Princess Diana, who was in need of an ally at court, and had already tried to make Sarah Ferguson one of her ladies-in-waiting. Aware of the problems in the relationship with McNally, Diana suggested Sarah be invited to join the royal house party for Ascot that June. Whether by luck or by design, Andrew, on leave from his duties with Brazen's Lynx, was seated beside her. She was on one of her periodic diets, and he goaded her to finish her chocolate profiteroles, and he would do the same. He then went back on his word, and she playfully whacked him. When they discovered that they had the same childish sense of humor, their mutual attraction increased, but Sarah still had feelings for McNally. She hoped this new love interest might make him jealous, yet a wished-for marriage proposal on a holiday at Villa d'Este on the shores of Lake Como never materialized. It was time to move on. Shortly afterwards, Andrew left on an official visit to Canada, but on his return he took Sarah to the ballet at Covent Garden, entertained her at Buckingham Palace, and sent bouquets of flowers. According to one of her friends, things got better and better between them as the weeks passed by. There was never any "is it on" or "is it off." It wasn't complicated because they got on so well together. That was the nice thing about it, a straightforward love story. Both were ready to settle down, but there were mixed feelings in the royal family. They had known Ferguson all her life, and she was part of royal circles, and shared their interests in outdoor pursuits, in dogs, horses, even charades, or charades, however you like to say it. Compared to Diana, she was easygoing and clearly made Andrew happy, but according to a well-connected source, Fergie couldn't stop talking, and inappropriately. She was all hijinks and jolly hockey sticks and practical jokes. Andy loved it. No one else did. I was told that the Queen said to someone after Fergie had left the presence, "Does that girl never stop talking?" The Duke of Edinburgh just thought she was a girl on the make. Even Sarah's own family were not sure about the relationship. With characteristic candor, her father stated, "She's either in love with Andrew or in love with the royal family, and I think it's the latter." Oh dear. There were also concerns that there might be scandals in her private life. A palace source confided in journalist Stuart White that the worry was Fergie had put it about a little and was a game girl. That phrase was used to me and didn't have anything to do with liking grouse moors. Yes, I think we all know what being a game girl means. Of course, Andrew's been putting it about as well. In December, Andrew took her to an Elton John concert to make their relationship public, but since she wasn't his usual type, the press didn't even notice. Then, just before Christmas, the story broke in the Daily Mirror. An attractive redhead is set to join Prince Andrew for Christmas at Windsor Castle. She is Sarah Ferguson, the new love in Andrew's life, and one of Princess Diana's best friends. A friend added, "No one is expecting any sort of early engagement, but this is a romance which should be taken seriously." Ferguson spent New Year at Sandringham, and Andrew broached marriage. Feeling under pressure from his family to settle down, on the rebound from various failed relationships, driven by a strong physical attraction to Ferguson and loneliness, he felt this was an opportunity he could not lose. But she was worried at the speed of events. As one friend remembered, while she was enormously happy, she was petrified about what she was letting herself in for. The courtship continued into 1986, with Andrew driving up to London from Portland every Friday in his Jaguar to take his new girlfriend out. They spent weekends at the homes of friends such as Alastair Hayden Paton. But reports in the press maintained the prince was still infatuated with Coo Stark and intended to keep seeing her. And there were stories of phone calls from Buckingham Palace from a Fiona Campbell. In early February, HMS Brazen docked in London, and Sarah made her first public appearance with members of the royal family, accompanying Diana to a cocktail party. Learning the ship's shop sold knickers with the word Brazen embroidered on the front, Diana bought several pairs for herself and Ferguson. That is just not subtle. Later that month, with Andrew back at sea, Sarah joined the Prince and Princess of Wales on their annual Closters skiing trip, impressing Charles enough for him to exhort his wife, "Why can't you be more like Fergie?" Any man who says that to his wife about another woman needs a little good smackdown, I think. After Brazen docked in Sunderland, on a 5-day goodwill visit, Sarah traveled up under the name of Miss Anwell to see Andrew again at Flore's Castle. Didn't he use that for another girl? Yet that Sunday, the News of the World ran a story, "Andy Girl in Cocaine Castle," alleging that drug-taking was prevalent at McNally's chalet in Verbier, which had been christened Snow Castle. It did not put Andrew off. After a boisterous snowball fight, he proposed. Ferguson was so surprised she offered him the chance to change his mind the next morning, but he only reaffirmed his proposal. Given that they needed permission from the Queen, who would not be back from a tour of Australia and New Zealand for another 3 weeks, they told no one. Eventually, on 15 March, Andrew saw the Queen, seeking permission to marry. She already knew what he was going to ask, and readily agreed. She was overjoyed, Andrew recalled, very pleased, and beyond that, what else is there? Just that of a delighted parent. He had already asked Ron's permission. After meeting the Major at the top of a long walk at Windsor by a statue of a copper horse and talking for about 20 minutes, it was short and sharp. Whatever the misgivings among the two families, it was obvious the couple were in love. Astrologer Penny Thornton remembered meeting them at dinner. It was a very merry evening. They couldn't stop touching each other. They giggled with each other. They were clearly, absolutely, identifiably mad about each other. The engagement was announced on 19 March. It had been delayed because of the budget the previous day, with an official photo call on the Buckingham Palace lawn. Sarah claimed to be attracted by Andrew's charm and good looks, he by her red hair. Their banter was a refreshing change from the usual formality of such events, and the stilted engagement photo call of Charles and Diana. Well, yeah, no kidding. I think for all of their pitfalls and the ultimate, failure of their marriage, Sarah and Andrew were really friends, and they actually really enjoyed each other's company. So, they did look like any other couple because they really were. The public loved her eye-rolling talent for silly faces, sense of humor, irreverence, unpretentious manner, ebullience, and the fact that, in contrast to the Princess of Wales, she appeared not to care about her clothes. The press were enthusiastic about the match, with the Daily Mail in its leader reading, "If the sailor prince with the roving eye really is ready to quit roving, then hey ding-a-ding, we say, for how could he do better than the delectable Fergie? A Sunday Times profile reflected that a few years ago Andrew looked as though he was going to be an embarrassment to the royal family, a loudmouth whose main role in life was providing models with stories to sell to tabloid newspapers. That was no longer the case. Instantly, Sarah Ferguson's life changed. A nondescript van turned up at her flat in Lavender Gardens. According to journalist Andrew Morton, for the next couple of hours, these courteous but brisk officials from MI5, the special branch, no one to this day knows, went through the house from top to bottom. Anything remotely connected with Sarah was packed away and loaded onto the van. Her flatmate, Carolyn Cotterill, was left with no pictures of Sarah, amid concern about her links with the Fast Verbier set, and that nothing should survive that might prove embarrassing. All traces of Fergie's previous life were wiped. She was installed in Andrew's suite of rooms on the second floor of Buckingham Palace, under the supervision of his valet, Michael Perry, and the Queen's chief maid, Caroline Terry. Ferguson remembered Andrew's bedroom and dressing room, an absolute time warp. Dozens of stuffed animals blanketed the bed, while pink teddies hugged each other atop a lamp. Boys' guns and bachelor bits lay all over. One teddy bear wore a vest. It's tough being a prince. She now worked from the palace, sharing Andrew's police protection officer, and had a police escort when traveling. Her blue BMW was swapped for a Jaguar XJS, leased by the royal family and fitted with sophisticated radio equipment. She began to do royal engagements, joining the family for a service of Thanksgiving at St. George's Chapel and at the Royal Opera to celebrate the Queen's birthday, and in May sharing the royal box with the Queen at the Windsor Horse Show. The couple were invited to stay with Prince Charles at Highgrove, whose housekeeper Wendy Barry remembered one visit in particular that suggested the night before had been riotous. By all the evidence, Andrew and Sarah had decided to try out both rooms in the space of a few hours. Several staff at Buckingham Palace had warned me that I would be changing both beds every day for the length of their visit. The morning before they left, Sarah approached the housekeeper to ask for some ordinary writing paper for her room. I was struck by how pleasant but ordinary she was in the flesh, without any proper makeup on, recalled Barry. Dressed in a long skirt and jumper, with her hair tied into a ponytail, she looked more like a prep school matron than a duchess in waiting. I've just got to send some letters, though, on Highgrove paper, she giggled. I promised a friend who will be so terribly impressed. The wedding had been set for 23rd of July, and just over a week before, Andrew held his stag night at Aubrey House in Holland Park, attended by, among others, Prince Charles, Guy Roxburgh, David Frost, Elton John, and Billy Connolly. Sarah, her close friend Julia Dodd Noble, Princess Diana, Connolly's wife Pamela Stevenson, and Elton John's wife Renate tried to gatecrash the party dressed as policewomen. After failing to do so, they repaired to a nightclub, Annabelle's, where a sports journalist approached the Princess of Wales in the belief she was a kissogram. The women then returned to Buckingham Palace, where, with the approval of the Royal Protection Guard, they stopped Andrew's car and threatened to take him to the station and have his particulars taken down. The following week, Ronald Ferguson hosted a dinner and dance for 800 at Smith's Lawn, the headquarters of the Guards Polo Club, attended by members of the royal family, Nancy Reagan, Elton John, Billy Connolly, and Pamela Stevenson. Christa Berg and family friends. Suspended around the walls were life belts initialed HMS Andrew and HMS Sarah. By royal tradition, Sarah spent the night before the wedding with the Queen Mother at Clarence House, where her visitors included the Princess of Wales. Dressed in jeans, Fergie briefly mingled with the crowds who had gathered until she was recognized and had to depart to go to bed. Let's stop there for the day, because then we move on into like the second part of the book, and I don't want to just read the first and then stop. So tomorrow we'll begin part 2. I'm really enjoying it. I thought that after watching Cheer Denise read it that I would just like remember everything, but it's like I've never heard it before, so that's good. Maybe I'm just, in one ear, out the other. Okay, so I'm going to go and search up all the pictures. Oh my gosh, I was having such a hassle with editing. I was in shambles. I'm like, oh, this is not worth it. What am I doing? But then I figured it out and it wasn't so bad. And I did rewatch yesterday's video, and I think I will maybe the pictures went away too quickly. I don't know. Maybe I should keep them up a little longer so we can really stare at them, I will put the links for the things that I mentioned in the description if I can find them all. And can't think of anything else. Oh, I was thinking of maybe starting, I mentioned before, a side series. Nothing that would take away from our reading. I won't do a side series at the expense of the books that, the biographies and the histories that we're reading. But I was thinking maybe I'll post 2 videos a day. The other one I wouldn't edit at all. And I'm thinking that I might start reading some Canadian literature because, I doubt that they're well known in other parts of the world. And Canadian literature has such a, I don't want to say such a vibe, but, guys, my lexicon struggles. I understand words, but sometimes I struggle to use them. Okay. But it's such a vibe. Just like if you read a lot of Russian literature, all Russian literature feels the same in a certain sort of way. There's just an atmosphere. Well, I would say it's the same for Canadian literature, especially Canadian literature that comes from the prairies. So that comes from out west. There's just a feeling. It's sort of stark, sort of barren. It strangely reflects the landscape in a way. Anyway, so I was thinking, well, gee, what can I offer that hasn't been done a million times? So I'm thinking that I will start reading some Canadian novels on the side. Just, can be a little something to relax to or fall asleep to, however you want to use it. All right, let me know what you think. And I'm so glad that you joined me today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate you all so much. I will be back tomorrow. See you later. Mwah.